Week 9 waiver adds and injury report with Dr. Vignesh Swami. Stick around all the way to the end. We have some bonus players you should be stashing for the fantasy playoffs. Welcome into the Pretend GM. I'm Alfredo Brown. Before we go any further, I want to remind you guys that you need to like and subscribe to this channel on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, this is the episode to go check us out. We are in our full-on Halloween costumes. I am head to toe legit Ted Lasso. Vig reprising his role as the Wookiee Chewbacca. Also, we have an audio version of the podcast. Go listen to that in the car, house, wherever. Leave a review. Vig, let's get underway with our popular waiver wire ads going into week 9. And we're going to start off here with Greg Dulcich, the tight end for the Denver Broncos. He's available in over 50% of Yahoo leagues and over 60% of ESPN leagues. And it's weird to say that you need to add a Denver player, but Dulcich has been really good. He's had a 17% target share since being activated, 74% route participation rate, which is really, really, really good for a rookie, especially just in his first 2 games. This is really, really good for Dulcich.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned 74%. Usually these like elite, when I say elite, I mean like the Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, when he was elite, they get 85% route participation rate. So he's getting pretty darn close. He's the tight end 11 and tight end 7 in half PPR formats already. I think, from a dynasty standpoint, it's a no-brainer, but even now he's almost a definite starting tight end for the rest of the season. Our next player, and again, it blows my mind he is still available so widely, is Josh Palmer, wide receiver from Los Angeles. The dude is available in over 70% of Yahoo and ESPN leagues. I don't understand how. We know that Mike Williams is not going to play for another 3 to 4 more weeks. He can really play a lot of that outside role and kind of put Keenan Allen back into the slot a little bit. Really excited for what Palmer could do moving forward.
Yeah, Josh Palmer is one of those guys. We called him kind of the handcuff for wide receivers. He should have a similar, albeit lower, kind of boom bust value that Mike Williams had through those first 7 weeks. Williams, he was the wide receiver 9 in PPR format, and Keenan Allen, he should be healthy and coming back, but we don't know. So this role could be really big for Palmer. The upcoming schedule for the Chargers is really great in terms of wide receiver production, and it's very conducive towards fantasy value. So the next 7 games: Atlanta, San Francisco, Kansas City, Arizona, Las Vegas, Miami, Tennessee, a lot of good matchups there for Josh Palmer to be a valuable starter. He's had double-digit PPR points in every game that he's played, at least 80% of the snaps. So we should see a lot of that going forward. Our third player here on the waiver wire ads for the week, Evan Ingram, tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Vig, you should be really excited. We're talking about a Jaguar. And Ingram's still available in over 50% of Yahoo leagues and over 60% of ESPN leagues, which is crazy considering how bad the tight end position has been, how good Ingram has been over the past few weeks. He's top 3 in routes run by a tight end in the NFL, and he's had 6 or more targets in 4 straight games, and you just don't simply find that kind of volume with tight ends.
Yeah, in a spot that is so hard to find any semblance of consistency, I think we're finally seeing that from Evan Ingram. He's, like you said, had 6 or more targets. He's getting 50-plus yards in like 75% of his games over the last 4 games. We have long been expecting him to get even more points based on a touchdown. He finally has his touchdown, and he's playing the highest absolute snap percentage of his career. And this is nothing against, other Giants quarterbacks that maybe threw with him. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is the greatest quarterback to play, but Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback than maybe some others, and he's playing with a good quarterback. And speaking of quarterbacks, this one's our next player is going to be a quarterback. Let's talk about Justin Fields, quarterback from Chicago. We knew he had that rushing ability, and it has been fantastic to see. In the last 3 games, this dude is averaging 76 rushing yards per game. Maybe that doesn't win your team the game if you're a Chicago Bears fan, but it wins your fantasy team. It gets a lot of points, and it's fantastic. How are his points? Are they any good? I haven't even looked.
Yeah, you look at Justin Fields and what he's been able to do over the last 4 weeks: 19, 20, 21, 26 points. He's been a top 5 fantasy quarterback over the last 3 weeks. You mentioned another player, Danny Jones. These quarterbacks that are running the football have become really, really, they haven't become productive, but they've shown that, those late round quarterbacks still work, and how important rushing has become for that position. Talking about another rusher of the ball, Alex Madison, running back for the Minnesota Vikings. This to me is just absolutely nuts that Alexander Madison is available in over 50% of Yahoo leagues and over 70% of ESPN leagues. This is the guy that when you think running back handcuff, it's Alex Madison every single time. It's crazy he's not rostered everywhere. Dalvin Cook has missed 2 or more games in every single season that he's been in the NFL, and Madison has been good every time he's filled in. I just don't understand.
Yeah, we have seen what handcuffs can do, especially good handcuffs can do when the star player goes down. We've seen Herbert do it. Tony Pollard's been really great. And we know the Vikings have one of the easiest playoff schedules for the RBs. We are not predicting that Madison is going to get hurt. Or that, Dalvin's going to get hurt. But Madison is just a great handcuff to have, and is probably one of the best quote unquote backup running backs in the league. I think he's an absolute must have handcuff. If you truly don't need a roster spot for someone else that you have, Madison's a good like sort of stash to have. Speaking of stashes too, this is a player like really fell off everyone's radar.
Did you say stash?
I did,
because I've been growing mine out.
But I want to talk about Treylon Burks. We've been talking about people who are on 50, 60% available. And yes, I'm ignoring your Ted Lasso stash.
Yeah, I hate that
listening to this show.
I hate that you sidestepped my mustache comment. I've worked so hard to grow my mustache, and I bring it up, and you just sidestep it like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, man. Look, some people are listening to this show. They're not watching, and
that's on them. You need to go to YouTube right now and look at the glorious stash. All right, back to Treylon Burks. Go for it.
Treylon Burks. The dude is available in over 80% of Yahoo and 75+% of ESPN leagues. And yes, we get it. We know this is a pure speculative ad. Things haven't quite worked out for that team. They haven't worked out for Treylon Burks. But if you have space and he is still available, I feel like this is something you kind of want to go after, the kind of player you want to get. When he was healthy, he was absolutely getting the most targets per route run on that squad. And we know that Treylon Burks is just a massive talent.
Yeah, you mentioned that he was getting such good volume when he was healthy and was out there. And I mean, he wasn't on the field often, but when he was, he had a 38% target per route run rate, which is actually one of the best amongst all these rookie wide receivers. So it's just a matter of him being on the field a little bit more. And we've seen that nobody else in this Titans offense has really stepped up, especially in that receiving core. It's been all about Derrick Henry. So when Treylon Burks comes back, he could absolutely take over a bigger role. I'm not holding out too much hope, but he's definitely a guy to stash in case he does just break out in a big way. Another guy could break out in a big way, and this is all about his quarterback showing up, and it's Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. And say what you will about Deshaun Watson, and we're not going to get into all the moral stuff and the legalities of it, but when it comes to fantasy football, it could be a good match for them. And Donovan Peoples-Jones available in over 70% of Yahoo leagues and over 80% of ESPN leagues, and all he's done is produce 4 straight weeks of at least 4 receptions and 50 yards, 11 or more PPR points in 3 of his last 4 games. He's been solid. Deshaun Watson's eligible to return in week 13 versus Houston. That's just in time for your fantasy playoffs. And you go back to when Watson was playing football in 2020, he had the highest air yards per attempt among all starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And that really meshes well with what Donovan Peoples-Jones does on the football field.
Yeah, Don, he gets you a lot of yards per catch. So in a PPR league, if you get a point with a catch and about 13 yards per catch, every single time he catches the ball, he's averaging about 2.5 points. So 4 or 5 plays in, and he gets you double digits. He's a little discount Gabe Davis, if you will. But right now, he's averaging a little more than 8 points per game. You can easily see that jump into at bare minimum. I think the floor quickly becomes like a double-digit point every single game into the teens. And when we're talking about the fantasy playoffs, especially as we have bye weeks and stuff, he truly gives you a top 36 wide receiver 3 kind of potential. So the fact that he's available in like 70, 80+% of leagues, stop holding on to these people you're hoping are really going to pan out for you, and go grab yourself some Donovan Peoples-Jones.
All right, let's get into the rehab roundup. Vig, today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different voice. All right. Now, I don't know that my Ted Lasso voice is quite as good as my cowboy voice, but I did want to say this for today. All right. Since it is Halloween, I believe in ghosts, but more importantly, I believe that they need to believe in themselves. Vig, now that I started us off with a lovely quote from the great Ted Lasso, let's get started with the rehab roundup, and it's Jamar Chase and his hip injury with the Cincinnati Bengals.
This one's really interesting. They're releasing like a small amount of information, but I guess I'm going to read into it based on what they're not telling us. The fact that he did not go on to the injured reserve means that they are hoping that this guy comes back in, within that 4-week period, maybe in 2 to 3 weeks. It seems kind of minor. The fact that they aren't putting him on the IR, I'm feeling like you can kind of expect Jamar Chase to come back and still be the elite player that he is. And even if he's only a 90 to 95%, Jamar Chase, that is still like, a top 2, top 3 wide receiver in the league, perhaps. So I wouldn't panic too much. I wouldn't make any panic decisions at the moment. But yeah, so I think Jamar Chase will likely be okay overall. Who's up next for me?
So now, Vig, do you know the happiest animal in the world?
Do you want me to say the answer, or are you just going to tell it to me?
Well, Vig, it's a goldfish. It's got a 10-second memory. Now, if you are a Jonathan Taylor fantasy manager, you kind of want to be a goldfish right now because you probably lost your matchup this week. That would be me. I lost my matchup this week. Jonathan Taylor re-aggravated his ankle injury. What are we doing with him?
Oh man, yeah, he did. He kind of re-aggravated that same injury from 3 weeks ago, like you said. He left, he came back, he finished the game, but I mean, he did not look like himself. Look, we know this about ankle injuries. I think there is some reason for concern here. A lot of you drafted Jonathan Taylor as the 101, 102 kind of thing. And I think it's reasonable to have concern to continue to have that right now. We know this is a sort of injury that can really derail a career. So perhaps the Colts are going to be a little bit more cautious moving forward. Pay close attention to the injury reports and what they say. But I do worry that Jonathan Taylor may not be back to 100% himself for the latter half of this year. But we'll have to see what happens. But long term, if you're thinking what's going to happen, you're in Dynasty. You got Jonathan Taylor. Hold on to the guy. He's going to be fine.
All right, let's make a quick tea joke here about Cooper Kupp. I always thought that tea was just going to taste like hot brown water, and I was right. It does. It's not for me. Cooper Kupp went down in the final minute with an ankle injury. Vig, talk to me about it.
I have zero idea what tea has to do with Cooper Kupp. I mean, if
Cup,
we were talking
teacup. Come on, make the connection, buddy.
I did. I was thinking T. Higgins, and I was like,
nope,
you threw
wrong.
Cooper Kupp at me. But anyway,
you're wrong.
Kupp went down towards the very end. We know he's an elite PPR and even not PPR wide receiver talent. You kind of see him limp to the locker room a little bit. Look, we know athletes undersell every injury, but this dude just went out there and said, look, it got rolled a little bit. My foot got caught, slid to a side. He said it looks like he felt like he dodged a bullet. And the most likely scenario based on what happened does seem like at most, I think he misses a game or two, if at all. He might just be back. Pay close attention to the injury reports. It's not like you were going to drop Cooper Kupp anyway. But I don't know. Let's say Cooper is out for a week or two. What do you think, Alfredo? Anyone else on the Rams you kind of like?
Absolutely not. Allen Robinson is not worth playing. No one else. Maybe they trade for Brandon Cooks. No idea. But if Cooper Kupp ain't playing, I'm not playing anyone else from the Rams. Maybe Van Jefferson. I don't know. But probably not. Let's get to another player here, Ezekiel Elliott. And, Jerry Jones says that he's still the starter when he comes back. And if that's a joke, I love it. If not, I cannot wait to unpack that with Jerry Jones. So talk to me about this. Ezekiel Elliott, torn MCL.
Look, I usually give you crap for your voices and your bad puns and everything else, but your ability to use Ted Lasso references is actually quite unparalleled. But yes, Ezekiel Elliott tore his MCL, didn't play in week 8. And let's be honest, Tony Pollard looked fantastic. But we also know that Jerry Jones, unlike many owners, when he says something, it goes. He's sort of I don't know what he is really, but he's like part head coach all the time, no matter what happens. That being said, just because it's Ezekiel Elliott's backfield doesn't mean the dude is going to be the starter getting you all the points week in and week out. Your question is, can you trust Ezekiel Elliott to be the Zeke we used to know and love confidently week 9? And I don't think that we can. I mean, I am not feeling very confident about this. He has the talent. He will kind of recover from this injury. It's not like he's an ancient running back, but he's got a lot of miles and a lot of touches on him. And I am expecting Zeke to slowly fade a little bit more in his production. He may get you a few points from touchdowns, but I think his floor has dropped precipitously for me.
All right, Vig, we got 2 players here with hamstring injuries. And, well, I've always liked to tell my players that your body is kind of like day-old rice. If it ain't warmed up properly, something bad's going to happen. And Darren Waller and Deebo Samuel, each hamstring injuries. We know these can linger. Vig, talk to me about these 2 players.
Yeah, so, something interesting about Darren Waller was it was a very, very last-second kind of late inactive situation. There are people who still actually kind of started Darren Waller thinking he would play. These sort of soft tissue injuries are hard to say. The fact that he was close to playing and they stopped at the last minute means one of 2 things to me. Either he was very close and they didn't think it was worth re-aggravating it in a game that they clearly just blew and got blanked in, or it was a little more serious than they initially thought. This is another one where you got to pay a little bit more close attention to the injury reports. Look what the beat writers for the Raiders are saying. But overall, I mean, Waller's just been a relative disappointment for everyone, and so is that entire Raiders offense. But he's someone, if you got him, you got to start him, and I think he'll be back in week 9 and be ready to start.
Well, Vig, there are 2 buttons I never like to hit, and that is panic and snooze. But it might be time to hit the panic button with Michael Thomas, because that toe injury, he was supposed to miss less than 4 weeks. He's already missed 4 weeks. He may not be coming back for quite some time. Talk to me about Michael Thomas.
Look, I don't know if it's the time, but honestly, I love him as a player. He's absolutely fantastic. We have been talking about Mike Thomas not being himself, and like since last year, we said don't draft him. This year, we said don't draft him. We got a lot of flack on one of the comments on the YouTube, one of the earlier YouTube shows. Someone came back and said, "You guys know nothing about football. Mike Thomas can be great." Look, he is outstanding, but he has just taken forever to recover from a series of injuries. He's already passed his timetable. Like Dennis Allen says, he head coach out there says, look, when he can come back and perform, he'll be out here. And we saw what he did in week 1 and early on too, right? He commands targets. The team has a bye week in week 14, about 4 to 5 weeks from now. I think he actually comes back before then. Whether or not you can trust him and trust him to be a regular starter is hard to say. Pay close attention again to the beat writers in this case. They'll tell you what he looks like. If it sounds like he's looking okay on the field and in practice, I think we can expect him to come back and maybe be like a wide receiver, 2.5, 3 at best. But I think his floor is what worries me. I am not rostering him anywhere, and I would not start him with confidence unless something was to change drastically.
All right, we told you to stick around for our bonus players here at the end that you need to be stashing. You can grab these players off the waiver wire most likely. And the first one we're going to look at here is James Cook, the running back for the Buffalo Bills. And he's available in over 70% of Yahoo and ESPN leagues. He totaled 76 yards coming off the bye week this past week. And I mean, the production of the bye week is always very telling for rookies. It means that teams are getting that extra week of install with them and kind of getting them more ingrained into the game plan. Cook showed explosive playability. He had a 41-yard reception where he was able to make something happen. And listen, the Bills going forward have the 4th easiest remaining strength of schedule for the running back position. So James Cook could be a very important stash play as we get deeper into the season.
Yeah, and up next is going to be a similar kind of idea as Isaiah Pacheco, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. There was a lot of Pacheco love like in the preseason, and maybe we talked about, Alfredo, you and I talked about how that's maybe a little bit too much of hype, but the dude's still available in over 2/3 of both Yahoo and ESPN leagues. We know that rookies, as they transition to the NFL, historically, there's something about them just picking up their game and their speed after the bye week. For whatever it's worth, he's named the starter already. And we do know that against San Francisco in week 7, he kind of saw his highest snap percentage. If he can get onto the field anywhere towards like half of the time in that Kansas City offense, he's probably worth a roster spot. So if he's available, he's yet another player that might just be worth holding and stashing to see what happens, because he kind of gives you potential, a really good playoff flex play.
Yeah, we got a theme here going on, and it's rookies and running backs specifically. Kyren Williams, running back for the Los Angeles Rams. This is a name you've probably heard a lot, but now it's going to start to carry some more weight. He's available in over 50% of Yahoo leagues and over 80% of ESPN leagues. And the Rams apparently just hate Darrell Henderson after not using Cam Akers anymore. They just said we don't even want to play Darrell Henderson. He got out-touched by Ronnie Rivers, which absolutely sounds like a made-up player. It felt like the Step Brothers line. It was Ronnie Rivers and Sloan Kettering. Please. Okay. Thank you. I was hoping you knew the reference.
I got that reference.
But man, Kyren Williams is just a guy to stash. I'm sure you heard the name a lot, but it's the fact that they're holding him out this long means they want to be able to use him healthy. Vig, let's get to our final 2 players.
All right, man. Up next is Jaylen Warren, yet another running back from the Pittsburgh Steelers. We talked about so many of these handcuffs already. This is prime handcuff season. We are seeing people fall left and right to injuries. I just want to turn injuries off, but clearly that's not happening. And look, we know that Jaylen Warren is the very obvious and clear backup to Najee Harris. And to be honest, he actually led the Steelers in rushing yards in week 8. And again, Najee's foot, it does not look like that has ever healed up as well as we wanted to. Something about Najee Harris just doesn't seem right. And it seems like it's that foot. And between the two, Jaylen Warren just seems like the most explosive running back. So we're not doubting the talent and ability that Najee has, but Jaylen Warren just sounds like a decent sort of stash to have as someone who could really explode for you, and especially as we head towards the fantasy playoffs.
All right, and our final bonus player here is Jameson Williams, wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. I feel like we've been saying this for so long. He's available in over 70% of Yahoo and ESPN leagues. Listen, he's been a stash for weeks now, and this past week, Dan Campbell said he's probably going to need another 4 weeks until he hits the field. So that's potentially week 12, 13. You'll probably get a couple weeks there, but he's got some major upside. And this is just a guy to hold on to. I don't know how comfortable I'll be starting him, but definitely stash him. Vig, all the people watching, listening, be sure to drop your week 9 questions either in a review or a comment if you're watching on YouTube, and we will get back to every single one of them. That's it for us. Happy Halloween to everybody. Enjoy yourself. Be safe. We'll talk to you on Wednesday for our Trade Targets episode.